Thank you. Thank you. This is an absolute honor for me to be here because this is whether or not you know it all. We're all here to do one thing, and that's make an impact in a world that really needs us and needs empathy. Every one of us also came here probably on a slightly different path. And I got here on a trajectory of not from the heroism, but actually the opposite end of studying genocide, walking Rwanda, walking the killing fields, going into Auschwitz, going into Dachau. I was in Columbine. I wrote a bill to prevent school violence and stop school shooters. And someplace along the line, what I also began to realize is that there's something lying dormant that would have stopped all of this, would have stopped the bullying, would have stopped the wars, would have stopped the genocide. And what I want to share with you today is my biggest concern of what is lying dormant and what really can motivate humanism is that thing called empathy. Empathy is really the beginning seeds to me of moral courage. It's what activates our hearts to be able to feel for another human being, to be able to step in, and it's the best arsenal, the best weapon we have against bullying. What we're also seeing, whether or not you know it, is a diminishment of empathy. University of Michigan, right around the corner here, folks, has really told us that we're seeing in just our teens a 40% drop in empathy, 50% across the US. What's going on and what we can do? What I want to do is share with you 4 things that will cultivate it, what we can do to make a difference and really maximize our efforts to build what I call social capital. How can we get back as a group to realize the real glue that holds a nation together, that holds a society together, is the ability to feel for another human being, and that's also the good news. See, 98% of us come hardwired for the ability to feel for somebody else. You can look to the left and right, go, I'm worried about that guy, but could be the guy in the middle or on either side or behind you. But if our babies come hardwired for it, that doesn't mean there's a guarantee. It means it needs to be nurtured, and we need to nurture it up well. It's not a worksheet, it's not a poster. The goal we're really trying to do is activate a child's heart, and it becomes the first seeds of all of this, planted so they can reach out and feel for another human being. And I think that's where my own trajectory, or my moment of turning this all around and becoming converted, all of it, actually happened in a place at the U.S. Air Force Academy. I was there speaking with a general from West Point and another one from the Naval Academy, and this incredible 19-year-old cadet stood up and asked one of the best questions I've ever been asked in my life. He said to us, you know, I'm ready to go into harm's way. Chances are I will. But my biggest concern is not the fear of dying. I'm willing to die for my country. My concern is that I need to lead, and I need to lead well, and I need to lead courageously and with integrity. I want to be an ethical warrior. And so this kid turns and says, Dr. Borba, tell me what kind of habits I need to do to become an ethical warrior. You know, like, what did Nelson Mandela and Mother Teresa do? And I sat there and went, is that the most brilliant question ever? I said, I don't quite know that yet, but that's what I'm going to find out. And so what I began to do is turn my whole research around to study the best, the noble, the gallant. What do they have in common? It's not IQ, it's not a college degree, and it's not a zip code. Someplace along the line, they've learned some habits that activate their courage, but also mobilize their heart. And we can also look at some immensely incredible works right now of the rescuers out there, those who risk their lives to help perfect strangers. When I look at that and say, what's the commonality? The one commonality that they do begin to have is they've all been raised, or at least embedded with, this tattoo on their heart that I'm going to see that person not as a stranger, but a member of the human race. It's an activated heart, or just that code of conduct that no matter what happens, I can turn and go, that person needs aid. Now, interestingly enough, I would ask you, do you have a code? Abraham Lincoln had one. He began to memorize passages that helped him during his darkest hours, he said, as he would go back and forth in the White House during the Civil War and he needed the courage to fight on. He would memorize passages from Shakespeare. How about Admiral Stockdale? Hanoi Hilton, one of the most amazingly courageous men that I've ever read a story about. His English high school teacher had him memorize philosophical stanzas, and it helped him. How about looking at something else? Bystander effect, being able to study and help our kids learn that it isn't easy to step in and say no. It isn't easy to step up and speak out. 50 years ago, an event happened in Queens, New York that you may be aware of. And that was that woman, Kitty Genovese, who came back and stood in the middle of her apartment that evening and was repeatedly stabbed 38 times, screaming for help. And according to the research at that point, nobody came to her defense. But the interesting point was, 50 years later, we began to learn some other things about the bystander effect. Number one, many of us heard about it, but let me just share one other little thing. One day in rural Texas, a 13-year-old kid happened to be watching a Huntley-Brinkley report as this particular event was on TV. Talk about learning a mantra. He was amazed that people could be so cruel, and he said, I quote, that I made a pledge to myself right then at age 13, if I were ever in a situation where somebody like Kitty needed my help, I would choose to act and do whatever I could. No one in danger would ever be abandoned. 13, it stuck with him as a code. And that little boy, age 13, grew up to be a pilot. It helped not only him land a plane on the Hudson, but it helped everybody else that day who was on that plane, because that little 13-year-old who memorized that mantra happened to be Captain Sullenberger. My first question to you is get a mantra and make sure it's there embedded in your heart. If you're a teacher, you're a parent, you're an adult, help other kids begin to see their mantra, because conviction helps mobilize your heart and helps you become courageous. Another thing that we know we need is elevating examples. We need to inspire our children that start collecting good heroes. Who's a hero that resonates with you? It doesn't have to be someone who is outspoken and enormously assertive. Rosa Parks, think about her. Known to be an introvert, but she sat and refused to get up. That's an elevating example. If you happen to be in a book club, you happen to be reading fiction, keep reading them. Because we now know, according to neuroscience, that not only books help you become smart, but they also elevate your heart. Here's some other elevating examples to be aware of. Let's train our kids and let's start training them well. One of the most brilliant ways I've seen talks about an elevating example that teaches empathy, I learned in a place called Fort McMurray way back when I walked into a third grade class 10 years ago and saw groups of kids sitting around a green carpet. They were waiting. They were waiting for a baby that the class had adopted for the year, who comes in once a month, and the baby is who teaches the children empathy. The little kids are like this, all snapping. Snapping means your brain synapses are snapping. Imagine that. As the baby sits down on the carpet, the rest of the kids now look at the baby, and the teacher, the real adult, asks one thing. Look at the baby, and how do you think he feels? How do you know he feels that way? All of the children begin immediately to look at the kid. Oh, he looks sad. How do you know that? Well, because his face looks like that. Oh, look, he looks really tense. Look, because his little hands are going like that. And on the spot, I watched 30 kids begin to sing a lullaby to soothe the baby. Empathy. It's now being used with 600,000 kids, the Roots of Empathy program. Research says it takes aggression down. It reduces bullying. It's an evidence-based program, and that's the other thing we need to be very clear about. Let's use the stuff that only works. We don't have time to waste our time doing it the opposite way. Roots of Empathy is one approach, and I hope every kid can be exposed to it because it's brilliant. But let's also do one other little thing. Let's give our kids actual skills and resources so they can step in. We always look and say, but I taught them that unit on heroism. Or there's that chart up there on how to be a good active bystander. Children need skills. We need skills. We need to be prepared for that moment when we do have to step in and help out. And let me give you this as an example. I work as a contributor on NBC on the Today Show. Dateline called me one time and said, hey, I know that middle school is when really bullying peaks. Is there something you really can do? And I said, you sure can. Kids will step in anytime and weigh in sharp. If they have the empathy, they're prepared for it, and they've practiced, and so here's how it went down. We did a sting on those kids' parents. Hundreds of kids that day came to the set not realizing that it was actually going to be a bullying episode. We hired 3 kids, one to be the hero, the bully, another one the henchman, and another one was going to be the victim. These are actors. There are 3 unsuspecting kids in role after role after role is going to come in, just in a 20-minute scenario. The actors will start the bullying. What the kids don't realize is that they're being watched with closed-circuit TV monitors, and they think that this is actual real bullying. Well, we're watching hundreds of kids coming in and out. Nobody seems to be doing anything, and the producers are looking at me like, this really works? I said, yeah, just watch. And so we did. Until the most amazing moment happened when the bullying began. And I'll never forget it. It was Lucy, a 12-year-old, who sat and watched, and within seconds what I began to see is everything we've known about the bystander effect. Someone had trained this kid well, and someone had really nurtured empathy. First thing I saw her do was situational awareness. She turned and she was aware that there was bullying going on. The second thing I saw her do was look at the face of what she thought was the victim. She did every bystander active strategy well. She walked in a little closer. She clarified, are you hurt? Do you need some help? She gave him a controlling device to help him just play the Wii game if somebody took it from him. She turned to the other 2 kids who weren't doing anything and she said, you know what? This is bullying. We should do something to help. Come on over. Everything that this child did was brilliant. I sat with her father behind the screen, and I watched a father start to jump. Oh my God, I love this child. Oh my gosh, look at her. Oh, look, she's doing everything I told her to do. Oh, I love this child. I turned to Kate Snow, who was the contributor at that point. I said, get in there quick and help Lucy. And she said, why? I said, because her face is looking so distressed. She's going to go into post-traumatic stress within seconds if somebody doesn't tell her this isn't real bullying. By the time we got to Lucy, she was a basket case, sobbing uncontrollably. It had only been a 5-minute ordeal. When we told her it really wasn't bullying, it was make-believe. We just wanted to see if kids would step in. Lucy just couldn't stop crying. She said, I felt so bad for him. I felt so bad. I felt like it was me. And I'm going, Lucy, you got humanity, girl. That's called empathy 101. What we're going to do is let the rest of the world know exactly what you did every other kid can do. And that's the next point about all of this. Bullying by nature is tough stuff. It's tough stuff to be able to step up to a bully. But if we train all of us, not just kids, but let's talk about adults, we're dealing with bullies ourselves, and we practice this thing called heroism. It isn't something you do overnight, for heaven's sakes. You've got to help us, all of us, and help our kids learn. There's something called a growth mindset. You can learn it in little teeny baby steps. It's kind of like learning a violin, or it's kind of like learning how to be good on the soccer field. You've got to learn and you've got to keep practicing, and you will make an enormous difference. There's lots of things you can do. Take a moment to realize above all else that humanity starts with face-to-face connection. So I'm going to invite you to just do one thing and run one thing fast. Turn to the person next to you. This is required. Shake their hand, look them in the eye, and go, we're in this together, folks. This is about humanity, and let's go. It's been an honor. Thank you.
The Hero Roundtables are the global events that ask the question, what is a hero? You've just seen one hero talk. To find more and join the conversation, visit our website or social media.